It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesday, and if I sound trepidatious, it's because I have Scout on my lap. Hey, Scouty? Yeah, Scout has been having issues this week because the routines have changed, and he hasn't been getting his normal attention schedule. So as you notice, he's a bit of a love me right now. So if you see tail in my face or anything like that, Scout's a bit clingy right now, and he keeps getting stuck in places because we're pulling out like decorations and holiday wrap and stuff like that. There's a reason his name is Scout, and he ends up in places we don't find him till the next day. So it's been interesting times, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about disappointment, as I promised on Monday. And disappointment is a personally complex one for me. I'll get into my own personal history with the whole thing in a bit, see tail. But I'm just declaring that off the top so that if things seem skewed compared to, your definition or your relationship with this particular, I think, pretty complex emotion, that's why. And I think it's really important when we deal with stuff like this that we're aware when certain things cut closer or feel more personal to us than other things because of personal history, because that doesn't make anything more or less valid. It just makes it come at it from a different place. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm setting an expectation here because expectations are a big part of disappointment, right? So if you like this sort of content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Patreon support is extremely important in terms of ongoing development of new initiatives that I work on. Also, if you want to buy a Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. We're up to 6 people who need subsidized services, coffee.com/LeannaK. I could say I'm disappointed in the mental health system in numerous countries, but that would be understating it. I feel a lot of anger regarding what people are forced to go through. And this is why I think disappointment is complicated. Because much like anger, it is a real and valid emotion, but it's one of those feelings that is sort of, it's hard to find a word, weaponized, politicized, yes, all of the above. I'll explain what I mean by that, but I'm just sort of laying the groundwork here. Whereas anger, people don't like to admit they're angry because it's sort of like you feel angry, you lose. Which is nonsense. Sometimes there's good reasons to be angry. It's when anger becomes out of control and it's used as a justification to be abusive, that's the problem. Just because you're angry doesn't mean you have to do anything about it. Disappointment, I think, is something people weaponize when they don't want to admit they're angry because, like I said, people think if you're angry, you're somehow doing it wrong, which is not true. And the thing about disappointment is it's tied to expectations. Now, that doesn't mean, like I said, disappointment isn't a real thing that people experience and it's valid. It is. And so that's the challenge, is how to know when you're being fair, how to know when you're truly feeling disappointed. And it's, I hate the term appropriate, but when you're inbounds and when, you might be dealing with a situation where it's being weaponized or, something's not all on the up and up. And I want to be clear again. I know we have so many caveats to these things, and I feel like I'm repeating myself again and again and again. But some people find these videos out of nowhere. They haven't seen the previous ones. So I have to repeat this. People learn patterns where they don't realize what's going on with the patterns. So just if you recognize your behavior here, it doesn't mean you're doing anything deliberate or deliberately manipulative or nefarious. Just if you're getting bad reactions that you don't understand, this might be why. And because like I said, disappointment for me is complex because I was punished growing up for ever expressing disappointment. Whenever something didn't go the way I'd hoped and I had a bad reaction, I was punished, either with, being yelled at or guilt trips or sometimes even physical abuse. And that made me feel like I couldn't feel disappointed in anything. I didn't know how to feel disappointed because I didn't think it was something you were allowed to feel. And that may sound really weird unless you've experienced it. I think a lot of people do that with anger. They aren't aware that they're feeling angry. They pack it down, and so it ends up being depression or anxiety or some sort of self-loathing. Like they turn it in on themselves, that whenever you feel some of these emotions that other people find inconvenient or emotions that you're punished for, you turn them inward and use them as a weapon against yourself. And it's really important that you're allowed to feel your feelings. But when you start feeling them, it's new and it's overwhelming. And you don't do it in a way that other people consider appropriate. And so you get punished again, and you have to battle through that. It's a very difficult process, especially when you're surrounded by people who don't have the emotional maturity to understand what's going on. And I think that's frankly the majority of the population right now. There's nothing we can do about that. But it took me a really long time to be able to be disappointed and recognize there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not being bad. I'm not being mean to someone else by being disappointed. Same thing with anger. Same thing with sadness. Sadness isn't weakness, right? I'm not going to get into the details of my early life because, it's not relevant really, but I'm just, like I said, my own personal history with these emotions. But disappointment is particularly charged. And because I didn't feel like I could feel disappointment was a button. When people expressed disappointment in me, I was very controlled by it. It was like I didn't want to ever disappoint anyone because that's a bad thing to. It's weird how brains do that, right? A thing you don't allow yourself to feel is a thing you're somehow doing to other people. And I was raised in an environment where you caused feelings in other people, and that's not true. You are responsible for your own behavior, not the feelings of other people. And then people start going but if you know something's going to hurt someone and you do it, you're responsible for that because you knew it was going to hurt them. If you do something and you didn't know it, you couldn't reasonably know something was going to hurt someone, you're not responsible for that hurt. You can still care about the hurt, if that makes sense. First one, no fault of your own. When you talk about it and that's a button for somebody and you do it again, you're responsible for your behavior. You're not causing an emotion. It's a nuanced thing, and it takes some time to get your head around and get in a place where it's a balance of being healthy and still have it, it's healthy, period. And I have a lot of people asking me these days, how do I know I'm not being abusive? How do I know I'm not a wrecking ball to everyone in my life? And that's a very challenging question, because you can't predict impacts. You don't have perfect vision on your impacts. The only thing you can work on is awareness and accountability, right? Behaving with honor, and putting the accountability and the responsibility in the right places. Being too responsible for other people's reactions is not good. It's a form of, first of all, self-destructive behavior, but also it's a weird need for control. That if you're responsible for everything, then you can control the reactions of others, and you just can't. And so sometimes you're going to disappoint people. And it sucks. Because nobody wants to disappoint people, especially people you care about, right? But there are people who weaponize disappointment. And the important factor to consider here is whether the expectation set was reasonable, right? If somebody expects you to do something superhuman and you don't, and they're disappointed, that was an unreasonable expectation. And so, you know, you can care the person was upset, but not, how do I put this? Not take responsibility or take ownership of the problem. Their expectation there was the problem, you know, not yours. Best example I can think of off the top of my head is, you know, expecting employees to work 80-hour weeks and never burn out. What's wrong with you? You do. I'm so disappointed. Well, that's not reasonable, right? It's a 40-hour work week for a reason. When you expect somebody to do double that, you can't be disappointed when they burn out. Predictable, right? If somebody's got a 40-hour work week and they have access to mental health supports and they're given every opportunity to succeed and they don't, and you know somebody isn't living up to their potential and you're disappointed there, different story. You see how it works? The healthy disappointment is tied to reasonable expectations. Unhealthy, weaponized disappointment is tied to unhealthy expectations. And this is where I get into a major pet peeve of mine, where people are disappointed in public figures for not being absolute paragons and having perfect politics. And I see this language a lot. It's so hard now because of the political circle jerk, right? I first encountered this language with regularity on the left, but I've seen the right pick it up, which is what happens, right? Because the left has language that seems to get some attention. So even though the right claims they oppose everything the left does, they copy it because attention. So I see people refer to statements of famous people as disappointing. I saw it a lot with the Gina Carano thing, right? It's disappointing. It's so disappointing. And I thought at the time, she was an MMA fighter, and why are we expecting her to be a philosopher? You know, why? Because she doesn't conform to regular beauty standards. She's supposed to have these opinions that we assume she would have. Like, if you're expecting her to have right think as an MMA fighter whose breakout role was playing a semi-verbal heel in the Deadpool movie, you know, that's an unrealistic expectation. We can't assume someone's politics just because she's cute interacting with Baby Yoda. And I do think that whole situation could have turned out much more positively if people had been, you know, she's clearly raised conservative. She's from the beginning had conservative views. if people had not set a standard that was not reasonable for her in terms of her enlightenment, I think it would have gone better. Similar with, and this seems to have gone away with the dog pile on Bette Midler for comments about gender. Macy Gray, it seemed to go away, but I saw the whole disappointed. Why? Why do people have an expectation that singers and actors are philosophers? You know, you cannot agree. You can be hurt by their comments. Obviously, trans people are going to be hurt when a major celebrity is saying they're not real or mocking someone important to them. But when you say you're disappointed in someone who is just having an opinion on something they're not an expert on, is the problem really them? Is the problem your expectation? Or is it both, right? And this is where we get into what the responsibility is of someone who sings and dances for a living. Because more and more, you are expected to have politics that match the characters you play, right? I mean, I remember George Takei taking crap for saying that Sulu, he played the character straight. Sulu is not gay. And it's not right to make the character gay just because the actor who played him is, and he took some shit for that. People were disappointed in that. People got upset at Anthony Mackie for saying that shipping Falcon and Winter Soldier minimizes male friendships and like platonic male friendships, and let's not do that. And that's one of those things where I wish multiple viewpoints could stand and all be valid, because that's one of those ones. I think Anthony Mackie was absolutely in his rights to say that no, at least from his perspective, the way he's playing Sam is straight, that's the way the character is. That's valid. And hey, let's give some respect to the characters written and performed. Fair. It is also fair to say, yeah, but I connect with, Bucky's kind of, a lot of people see homoerotic overtones. I think Sebastian Stan is playing into that to an extent. Good for him. It works. There's that, villains and homoeroticism thing in comics going all the way back to sort of the He-Man Skeletor, very heteronormative sword-wielding hero versus evil wizard, and somewhat gay coded or gender non-conforming coded. These things don't exist in a vacuum, right? There's both sides, and there is no right or wrong answer here. That's what makes it interesting and fun. But because people have this expectation that they are, in order to feel safe, they must be in a place of agreement. They get disappointed when an actor doesn't agree with their read on the character. And I struggle relating to this because my reads on things are so atypical. I absolutely do not expect people to agree with me. I'm not disappointed when people don't agree with me. I enjoy a back and forth as long as there is respect in the conversation. And I've been struggling with some things have been really crazy, especially on Twitter lately. And I have some people I think are good people who were very pro Elon Musk, right? I saw that train coming. They really thought he'd be this big harbinger of free speech and Twitter was going to get much better for people like them and all that stuff. And this was where I could say I found their perspectives disappointing But were they? No. I was concerned that they were going to be disappointed. I was worried they were going to be sold a bill of goods, right? I am very concerned about the health, the mental health of people now that, that politicization of identity seems to be it seems to be hitting critical mass, and we're hitting a point where we're going to have to step away from the intense overinvestment, the inflation of group related identity, and start going back to, heaven forbid, treating people as individuals with unique relationships with their different bits of identity. Which I think is good in the long run, but it's going to be very painful for some people. And I'm worried about the transition for a lot of people. And am I annoyed by the behavior of some when they thought it was time for a victory lap and let's say offensive things just because we can, because it's now Elon days. I was pissed off. I was, and this is where I go, was I disappointed? No. Because if I'm honest with myself, I knew that this was something that was an element of these people's personalities, the sort of shitlord, edgelord elements. There are a lot of people, especially the people I met during Gamergate. I consider them friends, but I can't ignore they're shitlords, they're edgelords, right? That's how they came to the table. I can't be disappointed that they periodically revert to shitlord behavior. They always presented as such. Would I like them to step beyond that more often? Sure. Am I disappointed that they don't? No, because that wasn't my expectation. I don't expect to change people. I will give people tools. I will give people opportunities. But my expectation is that most people actually don't change. Not on a fundamental level. It's possible. Some people do. I know I have. But change is scary and lonely and hard. So I can't be disappointed with someone if they don't do it, or they don't do it as quickly as I'd like them to. Now, does that mean sometimes I have to end the relationship? Yeah. But I have never found it productive for a grown-up to tell another grown-up that they're disappointed in them. And there are exceptions to that, right? In a very intimate relationship where somebody said, okay, these are my expectations, right? In close friendships or in romantic relationships, when someone says, these are my expectations, do you agree to them? Yes. All right. And someone violates them, totally fair game to be disappointed, right? In these instances, when I met the people, they were shitlords. They're still shitlords. Can I be disappointed? No. Do I have to start wondering if I need to reassess, considering the change in climate and, the recognition that this isn't cute anymore? Things are escalating and I just can't, I don't have the spoons to deal with stuff anymore because it's upsetting other people I appreciate. And some people don't have the empathy to recognize there's a time and a place, and we disagree on what the time and the place is. These are all things I'm struggling with. And do I recognize that they are going to be probably disappointed when I go, hey, I can't do this anymore? Yeah, I have to accept that, because I live in a world where people put these ridiculous expectations on me and my conduct. And, I have had to get very comfortable disappointing people. And hello, Scouty. And I air quotes that because I think some of it is a manipulation tactic. Be better. You want to get an instant Kratos out of me? Be better me. Be better. No. Because better in these cases is subjective. You know, a lot of things I do, I cope with shitty situations with humor. I am deliberately not performatively nice. I refuse to just be a doormat because it's expected of me. And succumbing to a popularity contest to me is not better. And when someone who doesn't know me, and when someone who I don't know if they have my best interests at heart, I don't know if they're pulling for me or, you know, actively oppose me. They could be one of those people who are on the hate threads on Kotaku in Action about me, right? For all I know, they don't use the same screen names all the time. So be better? No. Who are you? You know, I don't care that you're disappointed in me. I do care that somebody's weaponizing disappointment to try to control me. Fuck you. To me, that's a healthy response. You know, because I don't think that... Rephrase. There is a difference between giving people benefit of the doubt, which I think is good, and accepting bad behavior, which is bad. Because benefit of the doubt means you give people every opportunity to get a good result. And, oh, he means well, is without an ask, right? Is not giving people the maximum opportunity to get a good reaction, right? To get a good result. Because if you're just eating the shit, oh, he means well, oh, he means well, oh, he doesn't mean to, oh, he means well, eventually you're going to get tired of it. And if you're so conflict averse that you don't go, hey, cut that shit out, what do you eventually do? You ghost the person because you're tired of the bullshit and they never know what they did wrong. You gave them no chance to improve, right? And so I make a conscious choice to get branded a bitch and disappointing and immature and mean and a bully and all that stuff, because I let people know when I do not accept their words and actions, because that gives them a chance to correct. And if it goes to shit, they can't claim they didn't know. And to me, that is better than not telling them, not giving them a chance to do better, and just ghosting them, and they never know what they did wrong. And yet, people still throw at me, I'm afraid I'll be ostracized, I'm afraid I'll make a mistake and never get a chance. You see, now I have a particularly strong reaction to this stuff, in part because it does get exhausting. I run out of spoons giving people chances and being demonized for it, right? But that's a choice. Am I disappointed in people because they behave that way? No, because at this point I'd be deluding myself if I didn't expect that clapback. It's irritating. It's exhausting. It's frustrating. It's not disappointing because it's expected. And this is the double-edged sword of learning how to feel disappointment, which is my personal journey that I had to learn, and I'm sharing it with you. Feeling your feelings is the first step to validating your feelings and then owning your feelings, right? Feeling your feelings means acknowledging them, naming them, making them real. Validating them is the process of feeling worthy of having these feelings and giving yourself permission and acceptance in feeling them, even though they might not be the nicest or most noble thing at the moment. Humans are humans, right? But then owning your feelings is sort of the final boss step, right? And owning disappointment means recognizing that it is tied to the expectation that I set. And before I make my disappointment someone else's problem, I check to see, was this a reasonable expectation, right? Based on what I knew of the situation, was it reasonable to expect the outcome I didn't get? And did I give that person reasonable chances to know that was what I expected and meet that expectation, right? And sometimes the answer is yes. You know, and that's why I don't subscribe to the nice game, because giving people those chances to avoid disappointing me means making my expectations clear, making it, you know, having the conversation so that people understand and agree to the expectation, but also telling people when they're not meeting the agreed upon expectation and giving them a chance to course correct. Now, of course, offering that criticism isn't necessarily going to feel good for a person, especially if it's someone you know doesn't take criticism well. But, you know, you still got to be, you still got to give them that chance. And that's where conflict aversion is a real mind killer, because people think that not speaking up early is being nice. It's being understanding, but it's not, because, you know, the other person could be one of those people who, well, they'll tell me if something's wrong. If they don't tell me something's wrong, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to assume everything's fine, which is a healthier place to be than constantly worrying that everybody's plotting against you, right? That's too much cognitive load. I have no patience for that shit because I got too much to do. I have long COVID. You know, if I want to be able to function without brain fog, I have to minimize the unnecessary cognitive overload. So I behave the way I want other people to behave. Hey, this is the understanding. This is the expectation. Hey, we're veering off. Let's course correct. All right, great. It doesn't have to be a big dramatic confrontation, right? It's just, hey, you know, I was pretty clear I can't work like this. And too often people weaponize disappointment as a control, and they may not even realize they're doing it because, you know, their parents did it to them, some mentor did it to them, their alleged friends group did it to them. They don't realize the mechanics of what they're doing, and so much of this stuff is mechanics. Certain communications do have inherent meaning, right? And I think it's important we don't lose sight of that in a world of I feel followed by an accusation statements. To summarize, because we're going over time. Disappointment's real. Disappointment is something we all feel from time to time. It's valid, but it's tied to your expectations. And if you find yourself constantly disappointed, look at your own behavior, your own expectations, your own communication, because you can control that. And if you tweak all of that and you make your expectations known and people still disappoint you, well, that's on them. If you're not communicating your expectations and only communicating the disappointment on the back end, that's on you. Now, what that means is you're going to have to be the asshole sometimes and say when something's not working for you, and people are terrified of that. But that's a fear you have to face because, trust me, You're way better off when you communicate up front, because then everybody, not just you, but everybody around you is functioning under reduced cognitive load, not having to be fucking anxiety Ratatasker from God of War Ragnarok all the time, right? If you don't know anxiety Ratatasker, look it up on YouTube. Oh my God, so good. Love it. Love the negative feelings Ratataskers. When I'm done the game, I may do some content on that, because so good. Anyway, that's my talk on disappointment. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Very, very, very important. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or if you feel like doing something good for somebody, doing something good for a stranger this holiday period, buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. We have six people who need subsidized services. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching, and be well.